Hello class, Mr. Dowling here again. Here in Module 3, we're going to be learning about Bartleby the Scrivener. Now, we're going to have a class session on a whole class discussion for Bartleby the Scrivener. And I also put a presentation up here as well. And I like the presentation up here for you guys to be able to look at because you can look through it at your own pace. And you can take notes at your own pace and go to the slide before and the slide ahead and kind of flip through it on your own time. But I also know some of you like video presentations or video tutorials kind of a little bit better as well. So I thought I'd go ahead and make a video for those of you who don't want to read through it yourself. So, Bartleby the Scrivener is written by Herman Melville, and it's a tough piece of literature, not in the sense of its diction and reading it. It's more a tough piece of literature because it's hard to grasp the purpose of it. So that's why it's really good practice for developing your own purpose and your own thesis statements and your own ideas about the text, and then supporting it with a bunch of different textual evidence. I had a couple different examples here. Let me go ahead and read through these for you, and you can kind of get where I'm saying how you can say almost two totally different things about the story, but because you can provide textual evidence, they're still both correct things to say about the story. So, this text shows the individuality of the human race because everyone in the story has very different worldviews, motivations, and ethics. The lawyer shows that he values authority, caution, precision, and organization. A good example of the lawyer valuing authority is when he asks Bartleby to examine a document, and Bartleby replies, "I would prefer not to." That's what Bartleby always says, as you'll see towards the end of the story. This confounds the lawyer because he has a natural expectancy of instant compliance. This shows that the lawyer does not expect disorganization or a lack of respect for authority. And when he is faced with both of those things, he doesn't know how to react. He's confounded by the situation. So basically, point one is saying that humans are different individuals, based on their background, their motivations, their ethics. And we show how the lawyer is this certain type of person, but as we can see in the story, Bartleby and the other characters are completely different. So this is saying humans are completely individuals, separate types of people. Point two, this text shows that all human beings are basically the same in that they're all affected by their backgrounds and past decisions. So the first one says people are all different based on their backgrounds. The second one says people are all the same, but they're only different because, different in certain aspects because of their backgrounds and past decisions. So how can both of these statements be correct? Well, let's take a look at the textual evidence for point two. A good example of this is if we compare Bartleby and the lawyer. The lawyer is shown to have value in authority, caution, precision, and organization. This can be seen at the beginning of the story when he says, "The late John Jacob Astor, a personage little given to poetic enthusiasm, has no hesitation in pronouncing my first grand point to be prudence, my next method." So it's very lawyer-y sounding. This is also supported when looking at the lawyer's life. He has spent 30 years as a lawyer and has excelled at his work because of his values in prudence and precision. The lawyer is this kind of person because of his values and how those have affected his life. That's just a little closing statement. Now, if we take a look at Bartleby, his profession and events in the past have affected him in a similar way to that of the lawyer. He worked in the dead letter office, and the lawyer even says, "Can any business seem more fitted to heighten it hopelessness?" That's what it's talking about there. "Can any business seem more fitted to heighten it than that of continually handling these dead letters and assorting them for the flames?" Handling letters that are undeliverable or dead has given Bartleby the sense of apathy that we see in Bartleby the Scrivener. While the people themselves seem different at first glance, they are the same in that their profession, values, and past have formed who they are in the present. So we can see point one is saying that everybody's different because everybody has different backgrounds. Point two is saying everybody is the same because everyone has different backgrounds. So people are people. It's just that they're affected by their past and their past decisions. So, point one and point two, they're both kind of saying different things. But because we give enough textual evidence for both of those, point one I would usually, elaborate on a little bit more. But for now, we can say that both of these have enough textual evidence to both be correct. So this is one of the reasons that we're taking a look at Bartleby the Scrivener instead of some other ones that would have been good for morality, humanity, and identity. But the reason that I really like Bartleby is because everyone in the class can basically say different things about the text, and every single one of those people can be correct. So let's go ahead and take a look at our Prezi presentation here. And I'll just kind of go through this with you guys, and you guys can listen along while you go through it yourselves. So, Bartleby the Scrivener. Let's get this full screen. And this right here is supposed to be like the dead letter office. I put a picture up there. And you can see, look at all these letters. These are all letters where the people are either dead, and so they can't be delivered. They're dead and they have no relatives, or it's just undeliverable mail. They might have changed addresses and they haven't reported it. And these dead, quote-unquote, dead letters, as we talked about a minute ago, affected Bartleby in a way that, might have affected. You could make a point also saying that, it's professions don't affect people at all. It's just their personality traits and they make their own decisions. And there's textual evidence to support that as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. Setting and symbolism. Most of the story takes place in the lawyer's office. While it might not be the next setting of NBC's The Office, they do have similarities. For one, we can see a professional relationship between the characters. So everyone in the office has a professional relationship. And, not necessarily outside of work. I don't think any of them in the office hang out outside of work. But they all know each other very well in the office, and they know their office personalities. And the same thing is in Bartleby the Scrivener. No one really knows. They have suspicions of what goes on outside the office, but they don't really know who they are. They might know that each of them have personal problems / dealings that could be ignored for the sake of office efficiency and professionalism. And so, as I said, we never see anyone's life outside the office. All we see are the trivial events that take place in the office each day. And anybody who's worked in an office kind of knows this kind of feeling where you know everyone, quote unquote, know everyone, but you don't really know who they are because you don't know who they are in their real life, their life outside of the office. In relation to the unit, does this show us anything about identity and self-awareness? Which life is the real life? You spend a lot of your day, each day at school or at work. Is that who you are? Or if you act completely differently in both settings, is the real you the one at home, or is the real you the one at school or work? So this is something to think about before our discussion. Which life is the real life? They might act, and we are led to believe they do act differently outside of the office. We are only seeing part of the real person in the story. This is one reason why Bartleby's constant inaction is so amusing and eventually grating to read. He is there in this part of life setting, constantly being shown in a baffling mindset. So, at the office, usually you do what you got to do at the office and then you go home so that you can, get paid or whatever and do what you want on your free time. What's funny about Bartleby is this part life, part real type of setting. He's doing nothing, completely nothing. And he's there 24/7. That's the real interesting part. That is for sure his real life because he's there 24/7. Even the lawyer, hints at what he does outside of his time in the office. But Bartleby is there in this setting 24/7. So I think that really either it makes him act a little weird or it's part of him being a little weird. Allegory. Death can be seen throughout the story. In the beginning, Bartleby is described as cadaverous, both in look and calm demeanor. Take a look at the way he behaves in the latter half of the story. In the beginning, he is portrayed as odd, but still human. As the story evolves, he is described more as a zombie or a ghost that haunts the office. Lastly, it is mentioned by the lawyer that Bartleby worked in the dead letter's office. The name of the place literally has dead in it. What is the importance of death in this text? So, I mean, you can definitely see the change in description and diction when it comes to Bartleby. Because in the beginning, he seems like a normal person. He has conversations with people, maybe a little odd. But towards the end, when the lawyer eventually moves his office just to get away from Bartleby, I think of Bartleby walking around in an empty office just talking to himself, saying, I prefer not to. I prefer not to. So, just kind of wandering around and mumbling that to himself. So we can definitely see the difference in description as the story evolves. Oh, here we go. So here, let's dive into Bartleby a little bit more. Take a look at the depiction of Bartleby to the right. We can see an air of apathy and or hopelessness and a sense of death. A sense of this becomes who he is. Could a total unwillingness to do anything be considered his identity? So taking a look at identity. What is Bartleby's identity? Is it possible that because he has no identity, this is the way he acts? That's something to consider. Maybe we'll talk about it in the discussion. Consider another focus of this unit, self-discovery. So he hasn't discovered himself. Is this why he acts the way he does? Is this why he eventually, starves himself to death, kills himself? Those are things to think about. And try and look for textual evidence. Go back if you guys have time before the discussion and try and dig up some textual evidence, because that's really what supports your idea. You can say anything, but you just have to have some textual evidence to back that up. Plot. While we are used to trying to find the point of a story, we have to realize that there isn't an explicit point or lesson to Bartleby the Scrivener. It's what you make up, right? The story is designed to be an exploration of human nature, taking a look at our lives, more specifically, our lives while working, and what, if anything, pushes us onward. This is why we have to break away at the text and make our own meanings. We could see Bartleby as someone who has no motivation or identity, and that is why he wastes away. We could also see him as someone of extreme resolve and possessing a firm grasp of his own identity because of his single-mindedness for utter inaction. What if this is all a protest towards the way people live their lives and the office mindset and, going to the office every day, having this fake life, going through the motions? What if this is his protest to that, is complete and utter inaction? That could also be supported by textual evidence. So, my take on the meaning, this is just throwing it out there for you guys to think about and, base your own off of, or you could say the complete opposite. And so my take on the meaning, or should I say one of my takes on the meaning behind this story, is that human beings need an identity and a sense of self that they can live their life by. Some might even say that describes a code of ethics or morals, which is the topic for our unit. One of the topics for our unit. Whether one argues Bartleby lacks an identity or that he has such a firm knowledge of his identity that he is willing to die for it doesn't matter. The story shows us that identity is the core to a functional human life. It guides us, and it is something we base many of our daily decisions on, whether we know it or not. So I want you guys to go ahead and think about this. And when we have our discussion, bring some of the textual evidence and some of the ideas that you guys have after either listening to this video and watching it or just going through the presentation on your own. But just think of some things, bring some textual evidence, and we'll talk about it as a group this coming class session. Thanks.